Good evening, Papua New Guinea, and welcome to a brand new episode of Business PNG. Tonight on the show, I sit down with Mr. Greg Pawson, the CEO of Kina Bank, as he discusses the bank's recent acquisition of ANZ Papua New Guinea's commercial operations. Mr. Pawson, thank you so much for your time and thank you for welcoming us into your building. So tell us a little bit first about Kina Bank House.
Kina Bank House, so very, very exciting. The building we're in was formerly, I think, Deloitte Tower, and probably one of the first sort of major high-rises in Port Moresby. So to actually secure the naming rights to that building, it's undergoing some extensive renovations at the moment. It's owned by NAS Fund, about a 12-month program, I think. It's due to be concluded the end of this year, which, again, we're very excited about. It's been a rather painful process. But yeah, no, it's good for us. So this is our corporate headquarters. We've got 2 levels. Our funds administration business and easy loans is on level 2, and most of our corporate sort of functions are based on level 9, including our funds management business.
And your main Kina Bank branch is over at Waigani?
Yes, we have 2 branches in Port Moresby at the moment. The main branch is at Waigani. We inherited that complex, which is quite sort of modern and contemporary, when we acquired Maybank in 2015. And we opened a new concept branch at Vision City about 18 months ago, which is actually really quite dynamic for PNG. It's a new way of doing banking, if you like. It's not a traditional bank branch. It's more of a store concept.
Right. Okay. Congratulations on the acquisition of ANZ PNG. So tell us a little bit about that, and was it a long time coming?
It certainly was a long time coming. So you can imagine quite a complex transaction in terms of negotiations. But I think the outcome is really what I would say a win-win for both organisations. For ANZ, there's been a lot of publicity, particularly in Australia, about their renewed strategy for South Asia, which is really about focusing more on their core markets of corporate and institutional banking, and making sure that they've got a dominant position in terms of capturing the trade flows from Australia to South Asia and vice versa. So the divestment of their retail, SME and commercial was in line with that broader South Asia strategy in PNG. And I think the great thing is that ANZ will still have quite a strong presence in Papua New Guinea, and they'll still have visibility of their brand, and they'll be servicing largely the corporate institutional sector. And for us, acquiring their retail, SME and commercial business is absolutely in line with our strategy. Those are the target markets for us as a locally domiciled, strong Papua New Guinean bank. That's where we want our focus to be. We want to be in a position to support Papua New Guineans that are buying their first home, or buying an investment property, or a car, or funding their children through school. And certainly the SME and commercial sectors here are a big focus for the PNG government. And therefore our strategy, again, as a local bank, is very much focused on those sectors of the market as well.
Okay, so you know, just as I do, that Papua New Guinea is in Port Moresby. So what are the plans for the, broadening and going out to the other provinces?
Well, that's really the great thing about this acquisition for us. So we clearly have a strategy that's about Papua New Guinea and having a presence and a footprint across the whole country. For us, that would have been a 5 to 10 year journey. It's not a cheap exercise going into some of the key provincial locations and setting up what we call bricks and mortar type branch operations. It's very, very expensive. So we would have to have done that over quite a long period of time. With the ANZ acquisition, it solves a number of strategic gaps for us today, now, which is good. I mean, we would have solved for those over a decade, but it means that in the next 12 to 15 months, we'll be well positioned. We'll have a national footprint, so we'll go from having 6 branches today to 21 branches. We'll be in all of the key provincial locations, branded as Kina Bank. We will have a far more extensive FPOS and ATM fleet. In fact, our ATM fleet will practically be tenfold bigger than what it is today. And we get close to 1,800 merchant FPOS terminals across the country as well. So again, quite a significant step up based on our existing capability. One of the things that we did a lot of work on through the due diligence with ANZ was looking at both of our respective banking platforms. And we decided in the end that our platform was actually a better, more modern, again, more contemporary platform. We completed quite an extensive upgrade of that late last year. And it has, we believe, a better service proposition and a superior capability, particularly in digital. And a really good example of that was the 2 mobile apps, Android apps, that we released late last year for our personal and corporate customers. So by virtue of that, we made a decision that we would use our banking platform and therefore move ANZ's customers onto our banking platform, hence why the transition period's quite extended, because clearly there's a lot of work for us to do and enhance our product capability so that we can acquire and issue cards extensively across all of Papua New Guinea, not just in Port Moresby and Lae, where we are today. And that will take around 12 to 15 months, we think. And we want that to be a great experience, not for ANZ staff, obviously, who are coming on to a different system and a different platform and a different way of doing things, but more so for ANZ's customers. Yeah. We want to be able to prove up that actually from day one, when we complete that migration process, that they can see Kina Bank is better. The service is better, and the way that they can interact with us is much better as well.
I'm Leanne Jorari in Lorengau, and you're watching Business PNG. That's a really good segue, actually, about customers, because your retail side of ANZ, I mean, that is all about the customers. Yes. So for ANZ customers, Kina Bank is pretty new to them. Yes. You know, how are you and your company, how are you going to transition for the customers?
So there's probably a couple of things there worth touching on. I think firstly, clearly we already have a lot of existing Kina Bank customers. So the outcome of this acquisition for them is hugely positive because they're going to have far more points of distribution to be able to access Kina Bank. And as I said, we'll be a nationwide bank, which is an aspiration that we've always had, but we're sort of bringing that forward. So I think that's really exciting. Also for Kina Bank customers, they'll get an enhanced product set. So in essence, the ability to be able to acquire cards, to have merchant terminals, to be able to issue cards and the chip-based cards, PayWave, etc. All of that will be building through that 12 to 15 month transition. So for our existing Kina Bank customers, they can expect a much, much better proposition from a product and service point of view. For ANZ customers, I would say much of the same, but better. And there's probably a little bit of bias coming into that. I talked about our banking platform, we think is one of the leading banking platforms globally at the moment. It has an amazing digital capability, much of which we haven't leveraged and switched on yet, but we will over that 12 to 15 month period. So I would expect for ANZ customers from day one, they will get exactly what they're getting today, but I would hope in a much better way. And one of the other things I'd say around that too, and I know it's been a concern, particularly for some of the ANZ's larger commercial customers who have ANZ banking arrangements in Australia and Papua New Guinea. I mean, we've got a team of people working with those customers very closely at the moment. We have very strong correspondent banking arrangements, and the acquisition, some recent changes to our shareholding structure has enhanced those correspondent banking arrangements that we have offshore. So our ability to remit and transfer money around Papua New Guinea and offshore as well, I think will be a far better, superior proposition to what ANZ are able to offer today. There's a bit of a myth, I think, that if you bank with ANZ in Papua New Guinea and you bank with ANZ in Australia, the ability to send money to and from is much, much easier. That's actually not the case. A lot of that depends on the degree of correspondent banking arrangements that you have, and ours are very strong and very secure. In essence, if you're sending money to Australia at the moment or from Australia to PNG, it's an overnight transaction. And we're doing a lot of work at the moment with those ANZ customers just to let them know that, that's going to be a much better experience for them.
Right, okay. You mentioned PayWave. That was introduced recently into the country recently by the Green Bank.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about introducing PayWave to your Kina Bank customers.
Well, the advantage of that, and again, we had that in our project plan. We would have been, despite the ANZ acquisition, able to issue those cards and accept those cards midway through next year in any event. It's quite an extensive program of work to be able to do that because you're involving what we call the card schemes, so the MasterCards and the Visas, etc. And it enables you to use your cards outside of Papua New Guinea as well, which is an important feature for us, and we need to be able to deliver that. The significant advantage for us, aside from it's a better proposition for customers, is operational risk. So for us, you can imagine with cards, there's a lot of potential fraud implications. The ability to issue a chip-based card improves or lessens the degree of fraud that we can be quite susceptible to. So I think that's really, really important. And it's a much easier concept card to use. As you know, with PayWave, it's just tap and go, essentially. So yeah, we're looking forward to being able to offer that type of facility.
I guess that leads me to my next concern, my next question. PayWave does bring with it a lot of, because it's like you said, tap and go, a lot of security concerns.
Yes.
So how are you, while introducing this, how are you trying to sort that concern?
I think it's a really good point, but I think the ownership of that security rests largely with the customer, clearly, to make sure that their cards are secure. And I think that actually forces them to do that to a degree, which is not the case today. I can't tell you how frequent our customers ask for replacement cards because they've misplaced their cards. So, you make a very valid point, but again, as I say, it really is up to the customer to make sure that that card's safe, secure, that they're not giving people access to PIN numbers and so forth. The threshold for tap and go in Papua New Guinea is actually quite low. It's around 50 Kina, and I think that's about right. So there's not a significant amount of damage that can be done if that card's stolen, and customers are protected in that respect in any event. They're not going to incur the loss, providing they report that the card's actually being taken or they've misplaced it.
I'm Leanne Jorari in Manila, and you're watching Business PNG. So going back to the Kina Bank acquisition of ANZ PNG. Now, ANZ PNG was a big partner, big player in financial education,
Yes.
financial inclusion around Papua New Guinea. Is there any plans for Kina Bank to sort of take up that mantle?
Oh, most definitely. So the Bank of PNG has quite a clear mandate that they want 2 million unbanked people today in Papua New Guinea banked by the end of 2020. And there's an expectation that all 4 commercial banks and many of the microfinance organisations that are operating here today contribute to that. So we've been in the process of developing a financial inclusion program. We have the advantage of being the 4th biggest bank today. We can set something up that we think is really going to work. And there's been a number of programs with respect to financial literacy tried and tested across PNG now for over a decade. The disappointing thing is, regardless of that, still 70% of Papua New Guinea is unbanked. And there's some unique challenges in that respect. Clearly, the geography and the fact that 80% of the population lives in remote geographic locations makes it very difficult to get banking services out to those types of locations. We're going to do it in a number of ways. So ANZ currently have quite an extensive Go Money program. We will continue to run that program under the Kina Bank brand. And we're also doing some work with one of the major microfinance banks at the moment with a view to being able to support them today in terms of what they're doing. It's very costly to set up independent financial inclusion program. So our view is, why not form a strategic partnership with an organisation that's already well established, that has a good platform and is doing this really, really well. And one of the organisations we're talking to, they have over 350,000 customers today. So we think we could provide them with technical support through our banking infrastructure, with some wholesale funding to potentially expand their services and have a much, much broader footprint. And given that we're going to have 21 branches across the country, we can help with that.
Is there any way you would be able to share with us who it is?
Not at this stage. We're just finalising what that might look like over the next sort of 3 to 6 months. But it's a commitment I've made to the Bank of PNG that we definitely want to be part of the program. We want to have a capability built around financial inclusion. We want to contribute, and there's a number of ways that we can do that.
What does the future look like for Kina? I mean, you've shared with us some of your short-term goals. So
Yes.
what does the broader, I guess, future hold for Kina Bank?
Look, I think it's very exciting and very positive. So, we earlier this year set a very bold aspiration to be PNG's most dynamic, progressive and accessible financial services company. We're the only bank today in PNG, I think, that has a broad capability. We're not just a bank. That's clearly an important part of our business and the biggest part of our business, but we also have an extensive funds administration business. We support the 2 biggest national provident funds today. With respect to that function, we also have an extensive wealth management business. So we're a truly integrated financial services company. The acquisition of ANZ's retail, SME and commercial portfolio really just gives us a much bigger platform to grow from. I think the future is really exciting. We've solved a number of strategic gaps for us. The first is around getting some scale with the ANZ acquisition, having a national footprint, building our banking capability, which really gives us a ticket to compete effectively. So that's the first point I'd make. Recently, we had some changes to our shareholding structure. So our founding shareholder, Fushan, divested their 35% holding. They've been very supportive over the last sort of 35 years, but that's really enabled us to get some large institutional investors in that will give us the opportunity to kind of expand and grow our services in PNG. And off the back of that, recently we got a lot of investor support, particularly from PNG, from Australia and New Zealand, the larger institutional funds, who I think are really excited about Kina Bank and the growth opportunity. So that they've been there and been extremely supportive. And by virtue of that, we've strengthened our correspondent banking arrangements, which means that we now have international arrangements and we can trade most of the major currencies. So I think putting all that together, the future looks pretty good.
Great. Thanks for that. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Or?
No, not at this stage. I think, as I said, we've got a large, pretty comprehensive program of work happening at the moment, a joint implementation program with ANZ to ensure that over the next 12 to 15 months, we're very close to ANZ customers. We're keeping them informed about what they can expect to see. I think for ANZ staff, this is a really good outcome for them. They're moving across to work for a local, strong, domestic Papua New Guinean bank, and that's how we're positioning it with them. Interestingly, around that, I talked about it being a win-win for both organisations. There's no redundancies. We're going into locations where we're not today. There's no duplication across both companies. In fact, a lot of ANZ's back office operations are performed offshore in a number of different locations. We'll be bringing those onshore, so that's going to present job opportunities for Papua New Guineans here, which I think is really, really great under the Kina Bank brand. So all in all, things are looking very, very positive for the future, and thank you for the opportunity.
Right, thank you. And that's all we have for this episode of Business PNG. For more information, or if you would simply like to view this episode again, visit EMTV online at the URL at the bottom of your screen. Or to simply join the conversation, like our page on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at the Twitter handle at Business PNG. Until next week, have a pleasant evening. I'm Leanne Jorari, and this was Business PNG.